In the remaining parts of the story, we will learn the complex web of emotions as decisions weaved throughout the story that create a rich narrative filled with love, jealousy, guilt, and ultimately redemption. The characters' struggles and choices reflect the intricacies of human relationships and the consequences of their actions. Ejike found himself growing increasingly fond of Ola, and before long she became pregnant. When Ola broke the news to Ejike, he was overjoyed but also anxious about the potential repercussions of AKU finding out. AKU was already consumed by her pain, and Edike could not bear the thought of hurting her any further. Despite his newfound affection for Ola, Edike's love for Akiu never faded. He still cared for her deeply. However, Aku's disappearance left her family and community devastated. The absence of their princess meant that they were unable to celebrate their annual New Yam festival and had to put many other traditions on hold as they searched for her. AKU could not return home for fear of the consequences that awaited her. Living with a man who hadn't paid her bride price was a sin that could not be forgiven by their gods. And worse still, Okeyu was the princess of the land. Thus she suffered in solitude, knowing that her actions had brought shame and suffering upon herself and her loved ones. Ola begins to pressure Ejike to marry her and is forced to call his parents to inform them that he wants to marry Ola and that she is pregnant for him. His people were known to marry as many wives as they wanted and believed in having a large family. His family was happy to hear the news, but at the same time, they were concerned about AKU. They knew how much she loved Ejike, and they loved her too, and they prayed the gods favor her soon. Upon hearing the news, AKU fell into depression and lost her senses. Meanwhile, the gods of her land had been watching over AKU, their mercy manifesting in the form of twins. Without her knowing that she was already 2 weeks pregnant, their gods chose to show her mercy, but in a twisted way, by making her lose her senses at a time of one thing she had longed for. While Ola was 6 months pregnant, Ejike tried to help AKU, looked for different healers, but unfortunately he failed, for they said the gods made her mad. Ejike had taken a step forward by marrying Ola, but he couldn't forget about Akiu. Unfortunately, Akiu was suffering from a mental illness that made it necessary to keep her in a separate house, attended to by maids. Despite the maid's attempts to inform Ejike about Aku's pregnancy, he was unaware of it all. However, when he finally visited AKU, he was surprised to find out that she was expecting twins. You can see the guilt on his face, for he has forgotten how much AKU means to him and her sacrifices. In his quest for a child of his own, forgotten AKU deserves one too. Ejike was filled with happiness, but he also felt a sense of guilt for ignoring Aku's condition. Ejike hoped that the birth of their children would bring happiness to Aku and possibly even aid in her recovery from her mental illness. He knew that Aku had been through a lot and he wanted to do everything he could to support her. As the story goes on, finally Ola gives birth to a baby girl, Uri, for she always makes jest of Akiyu and believes she is carrying the family heir. When Ola discovers that Akiyu is pregnant with twins, and this news does not sit well with Ola and her family, they are only interested in Ejike's wealth and status, and they fear that Aku's pregnancy will distract Ejike from their goals. However, Ejike's love for Aku only grows stronger with each passing day. Despite Aku's fragile mental state, Ejike continues to visit her more often, and their love begins to blossom again. As Aku's due date approaches, Ola's jealousy and hatred for Aku intensify. She can't bear to see Ejike's frequent visits to Aku's house, fearing that he may forget about her and their child. In desperation, Ola seeks her mother's advice and is advised to visit the native doctor of their village to charm Ejike's love towards her. However, despite her attempts to charm Ejike, their love remains unbreakable. Finally, Aku delivers a set of twins, a boy and a girl. They are named Ugone and Ugona. Baby Ugone is beautiful like her mother, and Ugona is a spitting image of his father. When Aku set her eyes on her newborns, she couldn't contain her joy, and she said, "The gods of my land have shown me mercy." Ola's jealousy only grows more intense. She looks for a way to get rid of the babies, but each time she tries, she fails. AKU and the twins are brought back to his main house to ensure they are well taken of, and he moves Ola to another room. Despite all the drama and tension, the twins grow and thrive, and their bond with their parents only grows stronger with each passing day. However, as the days seem everything is fine, Princess Aku was out for a walk around the community with her maid when a man from Nukwere spotted her. Although he wasn't entirely sure if he had found the princess, he greeted her anyway, calling her by her royal title. To his surprise, Princess Aku turned towards him, showing a glimmer of recognition. Filled with excitement, the man quickly traveled back to his village to share the news with the king and his family about the possible discovery of Princess Akiu. The disappearance of the princess had caused the people of the community to lose their sense of happiness, and the king's family had been in so much pain since her disappearance. The news of a possible reunion brought a ray of hope. However, upon hearing the news, the king decided to keep it a secret from the queen. He knew how much she had been calling out to their daughter ever since her disappearance, and he didn't want to open up old wounds. The king empathized with the queen's pain and didn't want to add to it unnecessarily. He was afraid that if it turned out not to be their daughter, it would only cause more pain. The day of her disappearance had already been marked as the day of her death, and the king knew how much it had impacted the community and his family. Thus, the king asked the man to keep the news to himself until they could confirm that it was indeed Princess Aku. The fate of the kingdom rested on this discovery, and they could not afford to raise their hopes until they were sure. The king empathized with the people of the community and his family's pain, and he hoped that they would soon reunite with their beloved daughter. Until then, he would do everything in his power to ease their pain. The king, desperate to learn the truth about his daughter's disappearance, sent two of his most trusted men to investigate the rumors that she had been found. After a perilous journey, they discovered that the rumors were true and reported back to the king and also her health. Upon hearing the news, the king was filled with a mixture of joy, relief, and fury. He summoned the elders of the community to inform them of what had happened. As they listened, their faces reflected a complex array of emotions: joy that the princess had been found, but also sadness that she was in such a poor state of mind. Meanwhile, the queen and Aku's younger brother, Prince Indu, also heard the news and were overjoyed to learn that his sister had been found and that she is still alive. The queen's eyes filled with tears of relief and her face lit up with a smile, while Prince Ndu let out a sigh of relief and clasped his hands together in gratitude. The king, however, was consumed with anger. King Emeka, torn between relief and rage, ordered a war against Ota for harboring his daughter. The news spread fast, and immediately King Ekenga of Ota Kingdom was informed of what was about to befall his people. The king Ikenga became scared because who wants to go to war with the wealthy kingdom where they had it all? King Ikenga had to summon his people. They came in confusion state of what will prompt the sudden meeting. He asked his people who dared to do such a thing and dared to bring death to his people. Nduka Ejike's father also was as confused as the rest of the people there. There then Ejike stood up out of fear, for he knew that a day like this will come, for he can never be prepared to face what will happen to him and his household. He was among the people being summoned and told his people of who Akeyu was and all that happened. With a heavy heart and state confusion, the king stood up in pain and fear for his people, for he couldn't sit down and watch his people slaughter for the foolishness of one man. So decided he to journey to the land of Nakiri with some of his trusted elders, and ordered his guards to join him in sending the princess back to her people. For if they wasted one more time, they would all perish. Another situation the Ota people and Ejike found themselves in was quite complicated. How to convince Akiyu to return to her people, for it won't be an easy task. Ikeyu was often not in the right state of mind, and they knew how much her children meant to her. She could not bear the thought of leaving them behind. Ejike, burdened by guilt and fear, made the agonizing decision to return Aku to Nkaere, hoping to end her suffering. He drugged her to sleep. When they finally arrived at the Nkwira, they were met with mixed reactions. King Emeka and the people were overjoyed to see the princess, but also heartbroken to see her so. King Ikenga and some of the elders had to apologize. There and then, Aki woke and started calling out for the kids. Her father became confused and queried them about her sudden outburst, for she looked so dejected and lost that one could see through the pain. And King Ikenga had to make King Emeka to believe that Aku's madness was a result of childlessness, or perhaps the gods made her so. This deception worked, and the king did not suspect anything. They offered their gifts of peace offering. Fortunately, seeing his daughter in front of him after all these years softened his heart. He decided to cancel the war, for it is shared blame, and bid King Ikenga and his people farewell. However, he requested that Ejike should not return to his kingdom ever again. The birth of the twins remained hidden, for Ejike was afraid that King Emeka would take his children, for they were the gift Akeyu gave him. Despite this, it was indeed a joyous day in the kingdom. For Ejike's family, things were not so simple. Ejike knew that he and Aku got married on their own, but as long as he didn't pay her bride price to her people, those kids belonged to the people of Nkore, and he lived in fear. They decided to conceal the truth from Aku's parents to avoid any potential conflicts. Ejike decided to move on and continue to look after the twins while continuing in his marriage to Ola, who was never happy since the arrival of the twins. Dear viewers, thank you for watching, subscribing, liking, and sharing to know what happens to Aku's health and her twins, Ola and Ejike. Will she ever forgive him? Share your thoughts. However, Aku's mental illness serves as a poignant reminder of the consequences of societal expectations and the weight of tradition. Her suffering highlights the importance of empathy and understanding in dealing with mental health issues. In the remaining parts of the story, we will learn the complex web of emotions as decisions weaved throughout the story that create a rich narrative filled with love, jealousy, guilt, and ultimately redemption. The characters' struggles and choices reflect the intricacies of human relationships and the consequences of their actions.